The Macon County Senior Citizen Center must hold a few fundraisers each year to stay in business. Recently, the folks there turned to a higher power as they held their annual prayer breakfast.
Let's take a few minutes to do that.
Shelvy Linville is the chairman of the Macon County Senior Citizen Center board. He told a big crowd seniors in Macon County depend heavily on this facility.
Now, this prayer breakfast is our #1 fundraiser each year. We have other fundraisers. I've had people to ask me, why do we have fundraisers? Well, that should be obvious. But anyway, other fundraisers that we have during the year, we have fish fries. We have 2 fish fries each year, usually in April and October. We have cakewalks and silent auctions. We have yard sales. We have bus tours. Now, these bus tours, the center can make money from the bus tours if enough sign up to go. And then we also have what we call the Tree of Life. If you'll notice, it's painted over here on the wall. Well, folks, it takes a lot of money to keep these doors open. We have monthly expenses to meet. We have a payment on this building. We have insurance. We have utilities. We have maintenance. We have salaries, etc.
Local humorist and author Jack McCall was the guest speaker. He gave a few examples of how difficult situations can only get better with the power of prayer.
I wish you could have known my dad, folks. Tom and I, we had great parents. And we've been blessed, like many of you. As a matter of fact, as I look back on the life of our family, we've pretty much been strangers to hospital halls. And after my dad died, I gave it a lot of thought about how fortunate we've been, how blessed we've been, and deep within my spirit, the thought came, your father was a praying man. And I realized that was true. My dad was a tobacco man. He loved tobacco. He's one of those 13 months out of the years guy. After you got the tobacco set, you could just turn it over to him. He'd take over till it was time to cut it. He loved to be out there working. He loved to be alone. And I realized years later that while he was alone, he must have talked to God a lot. In his declining years, he would spend time out on the farm, and sometimes Mother would push him when she needed stove wood, and my dad would go down on the riverbank and he'd cut a tree and trim it up and drag the whole tree and leave it in the front yard. And he'd cut it up as he needed it. So he was well into his 70s when he started disappearing every morning, every afternoon. Mother didn't know what was going on. She said about 9 o'clock in the morning he'd disappear. And about 10 he'd come back, and in the afternoon about 3 he'd disappear, and about 5 he'd come back, and went on for a week. And one day she said, well, Daddy, where are you going every morning, every afternoon? He said, well, you know, I was cutting wood down in the Potter field. There's a field down on the back of our farm where an Indian village once resided, and we'd bush hog it twice a year, and he was logging down there, pulling up wood, and he lost his log chain right out in the middle of this 5-acre field. And he said, I've been looking for it for a week. I can see him now like a man hunting arrowheads with his hands behind his back and his back bent as he walked along. He said, I've covered that field back and forth, crisscrossed it. He said, I'd start on one side and go to the other end, step over 5 feet, come back the other way. I could see him now looking for that chain. Well, it became a story among the family members that Daddy lost his log chain. He told everybody, and Mother told everybody. And another week went by. He's still going morning and night. I went down to visit one day, and Mother said, well, you heard about your daddy's log chain. I said, everybody knows about Daddy's log chain. It's lost. And out there in the middle of the field, you know, a log chain is the same color as mature briars. I mean, it's like a needle in a haystack in the middle of that field. Those blackberry vines crunched down. The last time I went to see him, before we found the chain, Mother said, your daddy's got something to tell you before you leave. He was always waiting for me out at the barn. And So after we finished our conversation, I went out the barn. He saw me coming. His eyes were gleaming. I knew what was coming. He said, "Well, Jack, did you hear about my lost log chain?" I said, "Yeah, Dad, I heard about it. Did you know I found it?" I said, "No, I didn't." He said, "Yeah. The other day I was down there, I looked for it for 2 hours." I said, "You know, I've been looking for it for 2 weeks." I said, "Yeah." He said, "So it's getting about dark. Going to have to head back home." And I'd done everything I could to find it, so I just stopped, bowed my head and closed my eyes. And I said, "Lord, you know I've lost my log chain. Been looking for it for 2 weeks. Can't find it." I said, "Lord, if you don't mind, would you help me find my log chain?" He said, "Jack," I opened my eyes and I was looking at it. It was about 4 feet in front of me, about 2 feet over to the right. When I opened my eyes, I was looking at it. When Dewey was a little boy, he had a high fever. Some of you know my brother Dewey. Had a high fever. Mother said it was so high that he was so hot you couldn't hold your hand on his skin. It would burn it made you uncomfortable. Fever was so high. Now today we'd say seizures, but back in those days, she said, I knew as a young mother that he was at the point of going into convulsions. That's what the old folks would have said. And she said, I was frantic because this little boy had gone limp in my arms, and I knew the worst was coming, and I said, "Lord, will you give me a sign this little boy's going to be all right?" She said the light was filtering in from the kitchen, and it fell on his neck. And just as I asked God to help me, she said, I looked at his neck with that light shining on a spot just below his ear, and I saw a bead of sweat rise up out of his skin. I watched it as it appeared up out of his skin and sat there like a little shimmering pearl. And I knew the fever was breaking, and I'd gotten the answer to my prayer.
Siloam Missionary Baptist Church pastor Jeff Blackwell says he knows prayers pay off.
I truly have appreciated the things that Jack had to say. I grew up knowing the McCall family and have read his articles growing up in Hartsville and born and raised around Cato. There's an article that he wrote several years ago about a man who influenced Jack very much and was a great influence on my life as well, Brother Bridgewater Wilburn. And remember him very, very highly. I'm not one shamed a bit of my heritage, my raising. Jack mentioned growing up in hand-me-downs. As a 10-year-old boy in a hand-me-down suit, the Lord saved my soul one Sunday morning in a revival meeting, and I'm not ashamed of that. I'm thankful for the way that I was raised, thankful for this community that I now call home. Not always lived here, but have always been welcomed here, and for that I'm very, very grateful.
The Senior Citizens Center has been invaluable for our older generation in Macon County for a long time. The seniors here hope this facility will be around for many years to come. Reporting in Lafayette, Barry Hiett, NCTV.